Hey friends, welcome back to day number 20, the final day of this 20 days of Kronos configuration series. Today we're going to see the final piece of this payroll section, that is the payroll itself, how to create the payroll. And I'm sure in the past 19 days video, if you're following along with me, by now you might have seen how to go about creating the payrolls, what are the structure that we follow, and how do we go right from the bottom and go all the way up. And I'm sure by now you have some good experience and you found these videos informative as well. And at the same time, I would like to thank you for all the comments and your suggestions, and thanks for reaching out to me. And some of you have reached out to me through my email as well, with your feedbacks, and really appreciate those all those comments and feedback that I have received so far. So thank you so much for that, and I look forward for seeing such great comments going forward as well, and on this video as well. So having said that, let's go straight into the application and let's review the payrolls. So here we are in the setup. You go to pay policies, and by now I'm sure you are pretty much well versed or familiar with each of these components inside the pay policies. Right here, today is day number 20, and we're going to cover payrolls. So before we get started, why don't we do a quick recap so that we brush up on what we have seen in the first 19 days. I'll make it quick. So right from the day one where we start off with definitions, I'm not going to go into each of this, but just a quick short review or recap on each of these building blocks that we covered, so that when we move to the payrolls, you can bring all those pieces together, because that's what we do, right? In payrolls, we put all those things that we've learned so far, we put it in the payroll, and then we'll see what steps we need to do after we create payrolls, because just creating payrolls is one set, but in this at the later part of this video, I'll show you what we do once we create the payrolls, because we need to assign this, and how do we assign this, and what steps you need to take care of once you create the payroll. So those things I will share once we create the payrolls, as to how do we assign this to the employees. Do we do it manually, or is there any other way of doing it? Because imagine you have 10,000 employees, so you cannot manually assign each employee the payroll. So there should be a way to do that. Alright, so we start off with the definitions on day one, where we saw how to create the pay codes. Mostly we'll create standard pay codes, but we've also seen that we can have pay codes which are duration based pay code. We can also have cascading pay codes. Most of the time the pay codes are the standard pay codes can be hourly or based in units hours, or it can also be days. Then day number two, we've seen rounding rules. If you remember rounding rules, interval round rule, they round the total time for that day. Punch round rule rounds, put the rules on the individual punches. So that was on day two. This works on the total for the day, and punch around rule on the individual in and out punch. Shift guarantee is when you want to pay a certain amount of hours or amount to the employee for working, even for, let's say, if he works for 2 hours, you pay 4 hours to them, especially for days when the employee works on a holiday or on a weekend. So you are guaranteeing a particular shift even if the employee works for less. If you work for 30 minutes, you may still get 2 hours for that day. Exceptions and core hours, we've seen that on one of the videos, both of these exceptions and core hours. So I'll put the description in the description, the playlist link which covers all the 19 days videos. So if you want, you can look it up in the playlist link itself, which will be in the description. So exceptions and core hours are like flags or alerts which tells the supervisor that, hey, your employee was late, or he left early, she came in late. Core hours are also kind of exception which tells If you have defined any core hours like 9 to 11 is your core hour, and if somebody takes a break or doesn't come during that time, it again creates the dark red cell on the time card. So these are flags. They do not have any kind of calculation uh, in the system, but these are flags which tells that somebody has exception on their time card. And then we've seen breaks. Breaks, you can have a break, especially for one purpose. If you remember about the break, is it act like a glue, so it will hold the shift together. If you take a long if you take a long break, then the break might the shift might break. So you need to hold them together. So you need to have the max length in this, which will act like a glue. So breaks can be defined to create to hold the shift together when employee takes break. Auto resolve exception, if the employee has unexcused absence on the time card, or if you take a long break or a short break, then by default you can resolve those exceptions by creating a pay code. Bonus instant deduction can be used for automatic meal deduction or automatic trigger. So if you want to create a trigger based on length of the shift or pay code or time of the day, you can create a trigger pay code based on another pay code. And if you want to create a meal deduction, automatic meal deduction, especially for salaried employees, you can use that. And then we've seen schedule deviation. From here starts the premium pay situations like schedule deviation, rest between shift, overtime, zones. These are called premium pay situations, because schedule deviation is like if employee is working during before the shift or after the shift, or on an unscheduled day when the employee is supposed to take rest or is not supposed to work, but if he comes to work, then you may pay them double time or overtime. So that's why these conditions are called premium pay situations. And then you have rest between shifts. So certain rules or regulations or legislation requires that you should have your employees or workers have 8 to 10 hours of rest between two shifts. But if you ask your employee to come when they are actually supposed to rest, you can pay them double time. So rest between the shifts, we've seen how to create them, with a minimum of 10-hour shift rest. Then overtimes are like thresholds. Overtimes define when the employee will start getting paid for working over and beyond their scheduled hours. So it's like a threshold. You can have weekly or pay period wise or daily overtimes defined in the system. And then you have zones. Zones are like those time frame in which if the employee is working, you can have a specific pay code like shift diff or night shift allowance or afternoon shift allowance or morning shift allowance. If the employee is working, let's say, in the night from 7 p.m. till morning 4 a.m., so you can create a zone for that because employee is working in the night shift, so employee will get night shift allowance. And then all of these pieces that we've seen, schedule deviation, rest between the shift, overtime, zone, has to be put all these together in the combination rules. In the combination rule, we've seen that combination rule defines the precedence, who wins over the other. If there is a situation where employee is in zone and overtime, then what takes precedence over the other? Who wins? Otherwise, the employee will get pay code for zone as well as for overtime. Employer will have to pay twice, but he's not working extra. He is just working maybe 1 hour extra, but that is fetching him in zone as well as in overtime. So in combination rule, you can define who wins over the other with these two rules, or any rule for that matter. And then combination rule is then assigned in the pay code distribution, where you give the pay codes like regular or your shift def or overtime, night shift, double time, overtime at 1.2, 1.5, double time, whatever pay code you want to define, you define that in the pay code distribution. And then the pay code distribution is assigned in the work rules. And then you also have other pieces of building block like the holidays, where you can define the holiday calendar. And then we've seen in the holiday credit rule building block, we've seen the contributing shifts and work history qualifiers. Contributing shifts and work history qualifiers are can be set up, not very often that you would be using them, but it can be used in order for you to get the holiday credit rule, for you to get the holiday credit. So by default, if you're not working on a particular holiday, let's say Christmas, you get 8 hours for that day. But in order for you to earn those 8 hours, the employer might say that you must be working for at least 90 days or must be working for at least 30 days in the last 45 days, and at least each shift should have been for at least 6 hours. Some conditions. So those conditions you can put it up in this contributing shifts, which goes inside the work history qualifiers, and then this work history qualifiers goes into the holiday credit rules. And then we've seen the specific building blocks here, the fixed rules, which defines the pay period, processing order, which defines which rule is processed first. Especially this is used for defining whether the if employee has a, let's say, overtime which the employee get after for with a threshold of 40 hours, and whether the regular hours or the zone hours or holiday worked hours should they contribute towards the 40 hours overtime threshold or not. So you can put the in the processing order, we should process first, we should process last. By default, the chronological order is already set up. You don't have to do it, but for some conditions or some requirements, you may have to use processing order. Punch interpretation rule. Again, this is used specifically and mostly if you are using clocks or if your clients have physical devices. So you can create a margin which will connect with the schedule if the employee is punching within the margin. Sign off restriction, you can have 3 different types of restriction created. You can get more details on that in the specific video that I created, but it can create restriction especially when the admin user tries to sign off the time card. Okay, and all right, so with that note, let's go right into, and we've also seen holiday profiles. This is something, it's not directly linked here, but it can have some impact because your holiday rules which you have put in the payrolls, or rather holidays that you put in the payrolls, that will be overridden with the holiday profile. So that is something that we've seen last in the day number 19 video, holiday profiles. There is another piece of setup which you need to do once you have holiday profiles, because you need to assign this in the employment terms. Alright folks, with that note, let's go right into the payrolls and see what we have in store for today. So creating a payroll is the last step in this particular building block that we are going to do. So we've already been using one, so I'm going to use the same one here as well. Okay, so here we go. Let me explain you how the payroll works. Now, before we get into this, you need to understand with your client, with your employer, or whoever you're working with, the customer, that what are the different type of employees that you have, different employee groups rather. So based on the employee groups, based on what do they get, the pay elements, you need to create different payrolls. I just created one for an example, but you may have, depending on the number of headcount, depending on the complexity, depending on the different group of employees the client has or your customer has, you may have to create maybe 4 or 5 single-digit, double-digit payrolls, and based on the requirement. Okay, so that is one thing that you need to remember. You may have a number of payrolls or different based on different employee groups. So starting off first, the name of the payroll, make sure that the name of the payroll is as per the employee group. For example, you may have employees who are salaried, let's say salaried and hourly. So one set of you just have 2 payrolls. Let's make it easy and simple. So you can name it as salaried, and then you can make it as hourly. Or maybe if you have full-time employees, then you can name it as full-time employees, and then if you have part-time employees, then you can make it as part-time. So your payroll, looking at the payroll, you should be able to understand what type of employee group they are. All right, and then these are 3 tabs that you have here under payroll. Holidays we've already discussed, as I mentioned already, so we are not going to get into that. Assignment rules, I'll let you know what it is. It's something that you might not use it quite often, but I'll share about some inputs on it once we cover the payroll section. So as you know, if you remember, when we created the work rules, we put in all these things under the work rule building block, right? So before I actually go into each of these, I want to show you a kind of a high level structure of the payroll. So let me just bring that up. Here we go. So this is the kind of a structure which tells you on a high level before I could go into the application again and share each of the building blocks, right? So this will give you a high level overview of how the payrolls are structured, or how the pay policies are created, what goes into what. For example, you have this work rule building block, and you can see that these ones that you see here, auto resolve exception, bonus breaks, call in core hours, exceptions, intervals, punch round rule, shift guarantee, then you have these ones right here, zones till rest between the shifts. So there is a reason why these ones are kept in this section and these ones are kept in this section, because these building blocks, they influence the time of the employee, and these building blocks that you see here, they influence the pay of the employee, and all of these goes into the combination rule, this segment, and then this one goes into the pay code distribution, and all of these goes directly into the work rule right here. So all of these building block that you see here, they go right into the work rule building block, and then these ones that you see here, they go into the combination rule and then in the pay code distribution. And then you also have some other pieces which are independent, like these ones. You need to just create them and assign it as in when they come. And there are some specific building blocks which will go directly into the payroll. So these ones that I'm highlighting here, this one will go directly into the payrolls, and there are some associated building blocks with it which you will see here, like the holiday table, holiday credit rule, work history qualifiers, contributing pay code, contributing shifts rather. And if you remember, we've also covered holiday profile. So this is the reason that I specifically covered holiday profile, though this is not going directly into the payroll. As you can see, it's not going into the payroll, it's going into the employment terms, but still it has connection with the zones, as well as indirectly with the payroll as well, because it's going to take away the other holidays that you might have assigned when you created the holiday table. So this is something that I wanted to show you so that you get an idea of the overall structure of the payrolls, especially what building block has what impact. As I said, these are exclusively which influence the time of the on the time card, and this is zones, overtime, schedule deviation, rest between the shift. These are all that influence the pay element of the employee. Okay, so this will give you a good idea of how do we go about creating the payrolls or the pay groups for the employees. So that being said, let's go again into the application and get started. Alright then, so here we are, fixed rule. So fixed rule we've already set up. You know that fixed rule defines the pay period. So I've already created it and it's assigned processing order. We didn't create this, so I'm not going to assign anything. Punch interpretation rule, the one that we created earlier, I'm going to assign that here. Then you have the default work rule, so that is already assigned because that's what we were testing. Then you have the default holiday credit rule that we've created earlier. So all you need to do is, as you can see, the previous building blocks that we've created, all you need to do is that you need to assign it here. Likewise for the sign of restrictions as well. So these are the things that we created earlier. I have just assigned it. Then some of the things that I would like to highlight here, which need some explanation with some examples I will show you. These are the things, these are you can say settings, like the settings that you have in your mobile phone. So these are, you can assume, same settings like your mobile phone or your tab, that the settings that you have, these are the settings for the payrolls. So you turn on some settings, it will work. You turn off, it won't work. So those are the things that you see here, specifically wherever you see checkbox. And then let's start with the payroll pay from schedule first. So here under this you have two radio buttons. One is, and you can use either one of these, you cannot use both. So apply pay code edits from schedule, employee schedule, or pay the second option, which is pay the employee using the schedule events. All right. So what this does is apply the pay code edits from the employee schedule. So if there are any scheduled pay codes, it will apply that. And if you check on this box as well, then if there is any other event like timestamp or other punches, then it won't. But basically, more often than not, you will see this is the radio button that will be selected. However, you might see a need to use pay the employee using scheduled events as well, especially if you have salaried employees. Okay, so that's why you need to, it's important that you differentiate the payrolls based on the employee group, because in your payroll, if you have employees both salaried and hourly, then you will get into trouble. So you need to have separate payrolls for them. So I'll give you an example real quick. For example, if this is the option that is selected, and let me save this. So I'm going to save this. Okay, update this version. I'm going to save this. So with the first option that you see here, apply pay code edits from the schedule events, if I go to the employee's time card, right? So as of now, the employee has a schedule, and if there are any scheduled pay codes, then it will show up here. As of now, there is nothing, so it's showing blank. But if I use the other option, this one, now I'm going to save this. So what will happen is it says pay the employee using all scheduled events. So currently the employee is scheduled to work from 9 to 6. So if your employees are salaried, they do not need to punch in and out. So with the second option that we just saw, by default you can pre-populate the in and out punches. Okay, so with this option you can pre-populate the time card punches. So I'm going to save this now, and let's go to the employee's time card and check this. It might need a few refresh. At times it works pretty quick, at times you need to refresh. So I usually log off and log in back, but I don't want to do that now. So let me see if I can go from one way. If this doesn't work, then as I said, you need to log off and log in back, but let me give it another try. Time card. There we go. So here it is. So you saw previously, earlier there was no punches, right? When the radio button was selected as apply pay code edit from employee schedule. But the moment I selected this option, you can see that the time card is now pre-populated based on the scheduled events. So one of them is the 9 to 6 p.m. So based on the punch, the employee schedules are generated, and then you can also see the shift is generating as well, and then you can see the punches are purple, which means it's a system generated one. So that's what it does, these two options. If you roll it back to the previous option, then this time card punches will go away. And then you also have this option, cancel pay from schedule on a holiday. So on any of these days, if let's say the 22nd or 23rd was a holiday, so if you say cancel pay from schedule on a holiday, then you won't see 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. punch on that day, because you're saying if it's a holiday, cancel the scheduled events. Alright, so then you have the transfer continuation option. If you put a check mark here, again, whatever check mark that you see here, these are based on the requirement but seldomly used. So continue labor account and job transfers until a new transaction is entered. A labor account are your labor levels, which is your primary labor account, which is made up of your labor levels. Job transfer, whenever you hear the term job or location, that has to do with advanced scheduler. Okay, so if you're not using advanced scheduler, you don't have to worry about it. So continue labor account until a new transaction is entered, and continue work rule transfer, labor level transfer, and work rule transfer until a new transaction is entered. That means when you go to the time card here in the transfer section, you can do a labor level transfer, or you can do a work rule transfer, right? So this is the labor level transfer, this is the job transfer, and this is the work rule transfer. So labor level transfer means if you're working, if you're working in a different department, and if you want to charge those hours to that department because your department is A and you're working in department B, so you would want to charge those hours to department B. So if you do that, 2 hours you worked in department B, and if you want to charge those hours in department B, then you will use labor account transfer. You can use work rule transfer if you want to transfer, or if you want to create another rule altogether. For example, if the employee is working Monday to Friday, they do not get overtime or double time. But if the employee is working on a Saturday and Sunday, whatever time they work, they get overtime. For that, you need to have a work rule transfer. So what it means is, if you do this, if you put a punch and then you do a labor account transfer, and you have this option set up which says continue labor account or work rule transfer until there is another transaction or another punch or another pay code, that labor level transfer or work rule transfer will continue until there is another transaction, like another punch. So for that day it will continue until you have another transaction with a pay code edit or maybe a punch. And then you have this option called as pre-populate project time cards with transfer accounts used in previous pay period. So this one is saying project time cards. If you remember, project time cards. So this time card is called, there is a name for this time card. Some of you must be knowing, it's called hourly view time card, right? And then likewise there is another type of time card which is called project view time card, especially used for the salaried employees. So this is an hourly view, so you see the in punch and out punch, but the project view time card will just have the totals and how many number of hours that you worked on that day. So what this means is, whatever you had in the previous pay period in your transfer accounts, do you want to pre-populate that in the current pay period as well, or if you want to bring them up from the previous pay period and reflect that. Again, if it's only if you want to, if you are using the project view time card, and if you want to do not want to make the employee do that because he has already worked, there is a pattern which he's doing every time he's doing the same pattern, then you can use this. Calculate projected totals. Again, this one is, so at the bottom you see that there are some pay codes that get generated, but for future pay periods, do you want to project the totals in your database? Well, I would recommend, again, it's up to the employer or the client, but it can have some system performance issues, so you may have to check on that, because if you calculate projected totals, then it will calculate the future total. So that means you are putting some pressure on the database or the system to perform this, which is not required. Again, it's up to you. I'm just giving you the information on what it does or what it can do. Schedule time without a transfer is treated as a transfer to primary account in default work. So if you punch, typically, as you know, if you punch in and out without any scheduled event, so it will go to your primary labor account. So that's what it says. Finally, again, based on my experience, these are seldom used. These 3 plus these 2, these 5 are seldom used, and you cannot do away with this. So either one of these has to be there. Then corrections. That means any historical corrections or retroactive corrections that you do. For example, you are in the current pay period and previous pay period is signed off. So, but now you want to go back to previous pay period to make any backdated adjustments. So when you make those backdated adjustments, when do you want that corrections to apply? Today, or current pay period, or previous pay period? When? So just The default setting here works mostly, so you can keep today unless there is another requirement that you have to change this. Edits after sign off. So as you know, once you sign up the time card is grayed out, you cannot do anything. But if you want to make it editable, you need to enable edits, right? So the enable edits option is the default one given here. So either you can manually enable the edits, so you perform some historical corrections, or you can do it through the time and attendance APIs. So while you set up the interface, you can say ignore, or you can just say put a check mark in the enable edits. Every time the payroll is run, it enables the edit, so you don't have to do it manually. The interface can do it for you. However, you can also, in the payroll itself right here, you can say that at the end of the pay period, enable edits after, let's say, 8 hours. So if the pay period is signed off today, after 8 hours, the time card will be enabled, and then you can do the edits, historical correction. But again, you need to remember that if you do it through the APIs, or you do it like this way, then that would mean that you are opening the time cards, and anybody can actually make edits. Like managers, they can go to the previous pay period and edit unknowingly as well. So, and that will have effect in the current pay period. So you may want to think about it and take a call on that. So these are the things in the payrolls, that these are the settings. I call it as settings. Just like your mobile phone, you need to have some settings. So you do the settings here, right? And then these are some of the things that you've already done. So all you need to do is you just assign them here. Okay, so moving back to holidays, we've already seen, so I'm not going to spend time here. I'm going to go just few seconds on assignment rules. Assignment rules allow you to have make a work rule, like here. For example, on an unscheduled day, if the employee is working from maybe 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on an unscheduled day, you can pay them double time. But in your actual work rule, that option is not there, right? So you don't want to do that in your primary work rule that you have, but you can do it with a makeup work rule here. You can create a work rule, but that work rule works only on the days that you define, or on the options that you select for scheduled day, unscheduled day, and for the times you have. Again, very seldom used. So now, what do you do once your payroll is set up? So once your payroll is set up, you define everything. You need to assign this to your employee, right? That's the last step. So that based on all your configuration, based on all these things, your employee will be paid, right? Based on all these, the employee's time will there will be an impact on the time, there will be impact on the pay based on the payrolls that we set up. And payroll contains all these building blocks, right? Now, once the payroll is defined, you need to assign this payroll to the employee, and to assign that payroll, you need to go to the employee's people editor right here. So under the people editor, you go to timekeeper, and then you assign it here in the payroll section with an effective date. Usually, when we do it for the first time, if, for example, you're going live, then it will be the go live date. You can default that. However, as I said at the beginning, right? You may have 10,000 employees, and you cannot do that, right? For if your UAT or your testing, you can create 5-10 employees, and then you can manually assign it here. But if you were to do it through manually for all your 10,000 employees, practically you cannot do that. So for that reason, you can assign these payrolls, or accrual profiles, or any other profiles that you need to do through the interface. You can use interface, and in the interface you can create logic, or you can get this directly through your clients. The clients can send you, and you can directly import them in the application. Okay, so that's how you assign them. You do not manually do it unless you are creating it for your own testing purpose, but you do it through interfaces. So you need to set up interface. So this is one piece where you do the configuration, and then you create the interfaces so that all these rules are assigned, or the profiles rather, are assigned to the employees. Okay, so that was about payroll. So you now, I'm sure you are pretty much familiar with all of these things, aren't you? And I know some of you, or rather most of you, have reached out to me through emails or based on the comments, and asked to cover some more portions. So let me know if you think you like the way this is, the videos I create, or if you want to learn more, you can drop me an email, um, or you can just like this video so I know that yes, you do want to see some more videos coming your way. So do like the video, so that give me a thumbs up, just to tell me that yes, this series was good, and the more the likes that I get, I will know that it worked for you and you found it informative, and you gained some knowledge. And if you do, just put your what did you learn, just tell me through the comment section. I want to know specifically what did you like, which specific building block, or you were trying to find something you couldn't find, but it helped, this videos help you. So anything specific, that will really appreciate that. Anything specific, if you have, put that down in the comments, or reach me on my email, uh, and share your thoughts, your feedback, so that I know that yeah, it worked for you. Because I know that this stuff was not there available earlier, because I was earlier trying to see, but it was not there. So I thought I can help if somebody is in lookout for these kind of videos. So let me know, give me a thumbs up, so that I know most of you have liked this. And if most of you have liked this, then I can go ahead with some of the series, and if required. All right, so thanks everyone. Once again, thank you so much for watching these videos, and for all your comments. If you haven't subscribed yet, do subscribe, and then take care and have a good weekend, everybody.